Welcome to Call Your Hits, a Storm Riders Airsoft podcast. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Today, my guest is Jordan. He's a friend of the show, he's one of our Discord moderators, and he's recently attended Midsummer Nightmare 6 in Jamaica, Vermont, United States. It's a Milsim event that's hosted by STAGOPs. It's a 30-plus hour Milsim event, and really is a Milsim experience. As we'll talk about with Jordan, you'll see it's not really a Milsim game, so to speak. It's really an event, and it's held over 2 nights and 1 day of play at this field. Really interesting to get Jordan's perspective on that, do a bit of an after-action review about how the event went, how his prep went leading up to the event, some of the lessons learned, some of the really hardcore stuff that he and his guys got up to. So I'm really, really glad to have Jordan here in the studio with us to talk about all that. So Jordan, thanks again for being here to have a chat with me.
Absolutely, Phil. I'm really excited to be able to catch up.
So yeah, let's start off. It's been a while since your last I guess big airsoft event. I know the airsoft season for you've been super busy, and so you haven't gotten out to get to play as much as maybe you would have liked. Yeah. So how did it feel just diving right back in head first, apparently, with this size of a event?
There was a lot of nerves coming into this event. I did Midsummer Nightmare 4. That was 2 years ago. And that was very soon after I started playing airsoft. I started playing, maybe 3 or 4 months into 2021. And Midsummer Nightmare was, a couple months after that. It was not very far off. So I'd like to say that I was a bit more prepared coming in this time. I knew kind of what I was getting into. I knew the AO. But to your point, this year has been a slow airsoft year for me. I don't think that was the negative coming into this. I actually think that was a positive. I was ready to go. I was, while nervous, I was like, this is the event. This was the event of the year when I was talking to all of our teammates and all of our friends. If we are going to make an event this year, Midsummer Nightmare 6. That was at the very beginning of the year. This is what we want to do. And once we all got the tickets, it became real. This is actually happening.
So why... without going into the actual details of the event, which we'll talk about in a sec, but why Midsummer Nightmare 6? Why did you all know, as a team, this is what we want to do? What was the selling feature for you guys?
Yeah, airsoft is airsoft, right? Airsoft events, a lot of them that you'll end up going to end up feeling like a large skirmish. Maybe it's on a different field that you haven't played on. Maybe there's different rules. But a lot of times you're still playing against people that are paying to play the game, that are there to win the game. That's airsoft, competition. This game is not a competition. This event specifically, Midsummer Nightmare, the series itself has never been about winning or losing. This has been about portraying and following and creating a storyline. Following through with the entire event is not just, oh yeah, we played from beginning to finish and we won. Woo! It's not like that. It's what did we accomplish along the way? What did we figure out? What story unfolded in front of us, and what part did we play in that the entire way? It was like I told my friends, don't come into this thinking it's just going to be airsoft, because it's not. Come into this with the open mindset of getting into the situation, becoming part of the land around you, becoming part of the force that we are portraying. And understand that is it. This is airsoft, but it's the best parts of airsoft are not always the airsoft. Sometimes the best parts of airsoft is everything else besides being able to shoot people with your guns.
Well, I mean, to be honest, that what you're describing is LARPing, right? That's the LARPing side of airsoft, of creating a narrative. And I mean, you might not like the term, not you specifically, but people might not like the term LARPing because it's nerdy or geeky or whatever. But the reality is, whether you're doing that in the context of a military simulation style, or whether you're going around portraying a warrior or a rogue or a sorcerer throwing lightning bolts or whatever, it's all creating a narrative and storyline that you are, as a player, engaging with and discovering that sort of storyline. So talking about that, can you give us just a quick synopsis as to sort of what the overarching story is going into this event? Like, you as a player, what do you know about the story, so to speak?
So the area is Hambatu. It's a fictional area. I believe I think Gordon described it as like sub-Saharan Africa that
Okay.
we are supposed to be in. Um, the idea of it is JTF Shepherd is a military force that is moving into the area of the GREM. It's the something mining facility. It's the GREM mining facility, to establish control of these incredibly rare earth minerals that are not accessible in other locations. So obviously, outside military force coming in to take stuff that really isn't ours, but are we taking it for good reasons? Are we taking it for bad reasons? Are the people that are trying to keep it from us keeping it from us for bad reasons? All of like that storyline ensues. Are we the good guys? Are we the bad guys? We are that invading force. The idea is that we move into this facility, and this has been a long storyline from the beginning. The idea is that we come into this facility with the idea of wanting to secure or deter the other militia, the Harm rebels, the Hambatu Armed Rebel Militia, I believe is what it stands for, to stop them from getting control of these materials, from turning it against us, from limiting our access to this, while also using this for our own gain. So somewhat political ideas behind it, taking these back to our nation and using them to our advantage. But the concept of this game specifically was that the Harm militia had overthrown the Hambatu government. There's no more government. There used to be a Hambuti's defense force that we worked alongside, and there was no longer that. They were all gone because we had overthrown the government. So now it's just JTF Shepherd, who was us moving into this location, and the armed rebel militia. And that was all it was.
All right. And we're not going to go into sort of parallels on the lore, like Sam always says. I'm not here for the lore, but it's good sort of it's a good sort of way to set the tone. The last thing, just to clarify, you JTF Shepherd, those are all the players, and so the armed militia, those are all the role players, right? You said at the start this is not like a Plasto Blasto kind of game; it's more of an experience. So the armed militia, they are NPCs, or not NPCs, but like game staff.
They are everything. So they're portrayed by STAGOP's Red Team, which is typically a group of experienced players that have played the event, that help set up the event, write the event, so that they're fully involved in the story. But their position there is as volunteer staff, essentially. Okay. So they can be an NPC that is fighting you, or maybe they're an injured NPC that you need to escort out. They could be the armed, I think it's the Revolutionary Militia, something like that. They could be the Harm forces that are fighting you, that are trying to stop you from doing stuff, and then they can turn around and all of a sudden change a shirt, and now they are a civilian in need. Now we need to be assisting them. They could become an advisor, giving us information. They are whatever role needs to be played at that time. And I think after talking to the runner of STAGOPs, Gordon, he was telling me that everybody had like 4 or 5 different roles. The guy that we were working with as our informant had 2 names. He was either our informant or he was the overlord, which was the guy that was the bad guy making all the bad decisions for us. And they would just swap radio frequencies, and then they'd be in a different character talking about game event situations or next steps. So these, like I said, they are airsoft players. Everybody there has played airsoft before, but they were not there to win or lose the game. They were there to push the story in the way that it needed to go. So
awesome.
It was.
We'll come back to that at the end, I think, because in terms of the AAR for feedback, I guess, on how all that ran. But I wanted to get that out. So why don't you talk about a little bit, if you don't mind, how did the lead up to the event go? Like in the, you can go as far back as you want, but just before the day started, how did you sort of get ready, get prepared, etc. Before this event?
So as usual, I was trying to run an LMG for this event. If you see any pictures, which I may or may not have already posted in the Discord, you can see that I was running my RPK, which means that my stoner was dead. It's still dead. It's still dead. I'm still trying to get that going. So prep leading up to the game, of course, is LMG breaking, LMG not being fixed yet. having to run a different one. That's always kind of the story of airsoft for me. I always have one or the other up for the event. This one for me specifically, I was a bit worried at the beginning of this year, knowing that we wanted to do Midsummer Nightmare, about the physical state that I was in. I had gotten sick and put on a bit of weight at the beginning of this year, and coming into this event, knowing that it's an endurance event, I was very worried about that. Over the past 10 or 12 weeks, I had dropped a decent amount of weight. I'm now like 30 pounds lighter than I was before.
Wow.
And it definitely showed in dividends, the return on investment that came with that. I was able to keep up with everybody. I didn't feel like I was falling behind. I was very well prepared, food and water wise. I'd love to get into that a bit more. Food wise, bagels and peanut butter, man. Bagels and peanut butter, just bagels and peanut butter. I've done 2 events now where I was like, I think I just want to go bagels and peanut butter for this event.
Carbs and fat, let's go.
Bagels and peanut butter, I'm standing by it now. My next event, I'm not bringing nearly as much food. It's just going to be bagels and peanut butter with some snacks. Lots of water. I was trying to, my best, drink at least half of my body weight in water in ounces every day leading up to the event. That's very difficult to do when you are actively, or when you're not actively thinking about it. And even when you are actively thinking about it, that could be like a big challenge. Like, man, I have to drink like 4 of these Nalgene bottles before the end of the day. Like sometimes I'll get through 2 and I'll be like, oh, I drank a lot. It's not enough. Besides the physicality aspect of it and making sure I had all my supplies, I had BBs. Luckily I didn't have to buy a lot of airsoft stuff for this. I had a bunch of BBs already ready because I bought a bunch at the beginning of this year that I didn't end up using a lot of. So I had a lot of my airsoft stuff ready, batteries. I had picked up a new flashlight for my weapon because everybody needs to have a navigating flashlight and a weapon light for this event because so much of it was played during the nighttime. So that was an absolute necessity. Gear-wise, I actually moved away from belt kit this year. I threw on a chest rig, my big Tasmanian Tiger Mark II, because I wanted to be lighter. I didn't want to have the thought of I need to carry so much on my belt right now. I didn't want to have too much on me. I went out with the idea of actually, this is enough for me for the next 2 to 4 hours of being out here, and that's it. Not needing to be out for 6 to 8, sleeping away from camp. I didn't want any of that this year. So I actually went lighter. No hydro carrier this year. I had 2 Nalgene bottles in the wings of my gear.
Really?
Yep. 2 32-ounce Nalgenes, one on the right and one on the left. And that's 64 ounces. I actually don't think I went through more than 32 while I was out, like on a mission. So I had more than enough. That's something to think about for next time. I don't need nearly as much water on my person.
That's really interesting. And I'm just curious, like, it sounds like it's more cumbersome than just having a hydro carrier on your back, right?
See, and to a point it is. The Nalgenes in the wings, while they do fit, they do stick a bit. They stick a bit into you. Luckily, the chest rig itself is fantastic and it has a lot of padding. But it was definitely something that I would feel. And if you look at pictures, you can see that it's a little bit wider than normal. But the idea behind it was I did not want anything to be on my back. I wanted to be able to move quicker, not have as many snags. I wanted my back to be open to get more breathability because it was going to be hot, and I didn't want to just have that extra layer of padding going over my shoulders onto my chest rig, making it harder to aim down sight. All of that stuff I wanted to avoid. So having just that one layer of straps made a huge difference for me. But I being an LMG gunner, I actually was able to do that because I didn't have to carry many magazines. I had my drum mag. I had a teammate carrying my spare drum mag, and I had a bag of BBs in one of my pouches. Now, STAGOP's rules say that I can't load my BBs myself, but being an LMG gunner, I am the only one that can reload outside of the fob. So when somebody, or reload your magazines, so when somebody comes over to me, I can say, hey, please take this bag of BBs, load my magazine, give it back to me, and now I'm up, ready to go. So I was able to save weight on that. I didn't carry spare mid caps on me. I had my drum mag and a spare on a buddy that I was always near, and a bottle of BBs. So for what it's worth, this event, I actually tried to stay as lightweight as possible, which I haven't always been like that. But this one specifically, it's like I need stuff off my hips. I need it all on my center mass so that I can, be quick and small.
And without going too far in the AAR portion of it, knowing what you know about the event, would you do it again the same way next time? Or would you do it over exactly the same way?
Gear wise, or the
Yeah,
just
no, gear
preparation
wise,
wise.
and especially like in terms of the Nalgene's versus the Hydro Carrier, that one is close to my heart. Like,
Mhm.
would you do the same thing again, knowing what you know about the event?
If I can find a very low profile option for a hydro carrier, I would probably go to that. Um, the Nalgene's, they worked, they did their job, but for any longer, it would have started to be really irritating.
Gotcha.
Because moving through the woods, being dense, it was always digging into me a little bit, and that's something that I've learned now. If I could find a 32 ounce that was flatter, maybe instead of a 32 ounce like round Nalgene, maybe or almost like a large like flask type shape of water, that might be more useful to me because it wouldn't stick into my sides. But I haven't done that research to see if that's an option. I'm sure it is. I'm
Yeah,
sure that there's some
we'll
options
talk
for that.
about it after.
Yeah.
But that's awesome. Okay, so gear wise, a couple of different changes. I know you've been like the belt kit king for a while, but nice to see, and I think this is a good lesson for everyone to take away. It's like just because you always do certain things doesn't mean that they're the best for that particular situation. And just being able to, be flexible in your thinking and flexible in your approach doesn't mean that you're going to get it completely right. I mean, as we'll talk about in the AR, I mean, there may be things that you want to change in the future, but it's important for people who are chasing that sort of efficiency to be really thinking about how are you adapting your kit to, well, for lack of a better term, the mission profile or the game that you're going to or what have you. So that's like leading up to the event, and I mean also super like absolutely chuffed that you were able to slim down a little bit, because I know that makes a huge difference. 30 pounds is really a huge amount of weight, right? It's tremendous if you think about the percentage of your own body weight. That's over 10% of your body weight, number one. And you think about, like, talking to Eric last week about Task Force Keg, they're doing hikes and stuff with 35 pounds of kit. I mean, that's almost all of that, right?
Hmm.
So really it's a lot. So I mean, way to go for you. And I know it makes a huge difference. So that's the lead up to the event, and then you show up for the event. And how does that start? How does it go right off the rip? Like, what are you greeted with?
So first of all, I made the decision of carpooling this year because there was a lot of us coming from the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
While I would definitely, absolutely carpool again, some unseen circumstances outside of our control made our ride a little bit later than we wanted to. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of being there 3 hours earlier, we ended up showing up at 6. And at 6 o'clock, Chrono was already done. People were already geared up. Step off was supposed to be at 8. So I wanted to have like a good amount of time to sit down and relax and not be balls to the wall right when we got there. But, like I said, out of our control, life happens type stuff. We still got there on time. We still got geared up. But right as we showed up, full parking lot, nowhere for us to really be. We had to park on the road leading up to the event. We were further away from everything. So we had to start hoofing our gear up to the truck that we were loading it on. Truck was already totally full. So now I have my huge ruck on my back. I have my 2.5 gallon water containers that are in my hands, and I have my spare gun that I was bringing just in the hard case. And I'm climbing up onto the back of this truck, and I got no room at all to put anything. And I'm like, well, this is what we get for being late, right? This is part of the game. And some may say that it was actually more useful to be late because the shit that was on that truck to begin with was getting buried by stuff.
Mm-hmm.
People load stuff for this event because they know that they might not have to ruck it up. There should be enough room on the truck, but every year that truck gets more and more full. When it's 45 guys loading up the back of a like a Ural style truck, like military truck, stuff fills up real fast, especially when people are bringing gigantic plastic tubs full of everything for the whole weekend. So first things first, showing up, was just not ready. We were not ready. We didn't have enough time leading up to it, but we were able to make it happen. Show up, meet up with all my friends, lots of reunion. Haven't seen some of them since February. It was a great time to be able to be there. But it was immediately, we had to kick it into gear and start getting ready for step off. So we got everything loaded up, got my guns sighted in to the best I could. It was already dark, so it was very hard to see BB trajectory and line up my red dot sights, watch hop up and stuff like that. And after that, we got ready to step off. Now, at Midsummer Nightmare 4, and this is a mistake that I will not make again. And this is a mistake that cost me and my team because I essentially gave some bad intel on this. At Midsummer Nightmare 4, the beginning of the event started with us loading the truck, escorting this truck all the way up the road to the mountain fire base where we were going to be staying at. Once we secured it, unloading the truck, and then that's when the event really started. We were in the event, we were playing, we could have gotten shot at the entire time, but that's not what happened at Midsummer Nightmare 4. This event, we went into that with the idea, I knew that we might be fighting prior to that, so I had water and a bag of BBs and my magazine, and I was ready to go. But some of my teammates that I had given that intel to, like, this is what we did in the past, had stuff still in their rucks that were on the back of that truck. So, for instance, I had one of my guys that, they had their water supply was still on the truck. They only had like a very small amount of water on them. All of the snacks they loaded up 2 hours ago. Now we've been sitting for 2.5 hours. We could be really using some of those snacks right now. That shit's already loaded onto the truck. You're not getting that off. It's not coming out. One of our LMG gunners had only one loaded magazine with no spare ammo, and his magazines did not carry that much. So he was essentially on borrowed time if we got into an engagement. And his radio was also in his ruck because he expected that we were going to get there and jump off and then the game would start. So that's on me for giving them that intel from previous years. That's not a mistake I will ever make again. I will make sure that everybody knows, like, there's a chance we could not make it to base until 6 a.m. And you have to be able to fight off of whatever gear you have. Like that, there's a very good chance that happens. So we step off. And we are tasked with, there's nobody in our group that's nods capable. So we're all white light or no light at all. Most of the event was no light at all. We were just walking in the dark, trusting the guy in front of us. And we begin by needing to clear the entire road up to the fire base of any IEDs so that we could clear the road. The truck could then get up the road without blowing up and losing everything, or, having to do some ridiculous sort of mini game to repair this truck. I don't even know what that would consist of if we missed an IED, but I don't want to know because that wouldn't have been fun. And it immediately set the tone for the event right at the very beginning because we were walking up that road and there were patrols already happening. And it wasn't engagement patrols. This was a full-on evasion mission that we were on, and we didn't know it until we were in that moment. We had to be walking up the road, hearing stuff coming, and then dipping down into the ditches on the side and just laying in wait, silent. No radio crackles, no noises, no nothing.
So how were you, and I should have asked this question before, how was the command structure set up, and like how were you getting information on what you needed to do at any given time?
Yeah, sure. So we had, there was CO and XO, like there always is at these events. So we had Kyle, who is the guy on our team who loves being in RTO. He was running the radios for command comms the entire event. He was up near the front squad lead, who at the beginning of the event was Will, one of the guys on our team. And he was relaying information to Will, who was then relaying what he needed us to do from there. So it was very hectic at the very beginning because the guys in front of us were slightly nods capable. Half of their squad was, but it was so dark in the woods. There was no light coming through the trees that they take too many steps in front of you and then they're gone. And you have no idea where they went, how far ahead they are, if they dipped into the woods or not. They were just immediately gone. So all of the communication was coming through Kyle at the very beginning of the event. And then as we moved into the later parts of the event, we were splitting our squad up into two groups. So we had 2 people on comms chat, and then everybody else was on a regular radio. So
right, okay.
Moving up that road, we evaded this mission, which was essentially a guy was looking for his goat. That was like the whole thing. He was calling out for his goat, walking down the road, saying that somebody stole it, and we didn't interact. We watched them walk by. They were flashing flashlights into the woods. We were ducking down, hoping they didn't see us, pushing up to the base. As we pushed up the road, and this was like at least 30 minutes of like walking up this road because we had to keep dipping down and then going back up. The forces in front of us started getting to a heavy engagement on the base that we were supposed to have control of to get the truck into. And we looked up the hill, and there were 3 full squads of people who were walking down with red deadlights, just walking down. There's 4 squads in this event.
Wow.
So we were the 4th squad, and we were just watching like an entire, like the rest of our team just dead, just walking back, and they have to walk all the way back to the gate where we first came in. There's no other respawns around. They had to walk back to the start of the event and then begin again. So we ended up taking control of the base. We actually didn't go up there because we got redirected. We had to go find that guy that was asking for his damn goat. We needed to try to find out his name. Walk down the road all the way back down to the gate start, and there was nobody there. So we huffed it all the way back up to the top of the hill, and we had secured the base. And what I was told this year is that we were not unloading the truck. We unloaded it for 4, and command said, you guys are not unloading the truck. That's cool. We go up there, and we're told to unload the goddamn truck. It just happened. And after I talked to the CEO afterwards, and he's like, yeah, I specifically said that 4 will not be unloading the truck this year. They will not be unloading it. And then we went up there, and we were told to do it, and we're not going to wait around. If you're telling us to do that, it's not going to be like, I was a little complainy, whiny, like, really? You said we weren't going to do it? But that's what had to be done. Everybody's gear was on there. So we started unloading the truck. Unloaded the truck. I think base was kind of quiet at that point. We had cleared out most of the rebel militia that was stopping us from getting there. And we immediately set up camp after unloading the truck, and we were on the first sleep cycle. So very reminiscent of Midsummer Nightmare 4, where we're unload truck, get your blood pumping, you're carrying all this heavy stuff, and then now you're going to sleep.
Well, I mean, clearly you shouldn't have done such a good job in Midsummer Nightmare 4 unloading the truck. Otherwise, it wouldn't have asked you again, right?
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse, I guess. It was me and Matt got up there and we just started unloading everything. And I mean, you really start to see like how much people brought for the event. And it's to no mistake, you needed a good amount of gear. There was definitely some luxuries that maybe did not need to be on that truck. But I don't blame anybody. I mean, you're out in the field the entire time. You're sleeping on the ground. Like, you need to make sure you have food, water, all that stuff, spare guns. So we're on first sleep cycle. Ours was 12 to 3. I had been told this weeks in advance by command, so I knew that was what our first sleep cycle was. Command didn't come out and tell us. We just said, okay, guys, it's 12 to 3. We started winding down, and I was out like almost immediately. Like, I laid down, closed my eyes, and I was out. 3 o'clock comes around. We woke up, and it was cold. It was very cold out, colder than I was expecting. I had my sleeping pad and a whoopee. And I was like, oh, it's summertime. It's like 80 degrees today. Like, it's not going to be that cold. It was like probably high 40s overnight.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know what that is in Celsius for you, but
it's single digits. It's cold.
Yeah. Like a typical summer day for us is like, oh, it's a nice summer day. It's like in the 80s, 90s. Starts getting really, really hot. But yeah, it got really cold that night, and I was fine until I woke up about a half an hour before I was supposed to, when I was just shivering. I could not get comfortable. I was just cold. And I was really kicking myself in the butt, saying, damn it, I should have brought a fleece. I should have brought a fleece hat. Like, I should have brought something just to be a little bit warmer. But in my head, it's summertime. Yeah. I didn't need a sleeping bag. I had my whoopee, and I'm wearing BDUs. That should be more than enough. And a sleeping pad. And that wasn't enough. So
you wake up and you're cold. So then what's your game plan for that situation?
Yeah, so woke up cold. I said, I tried to go back to sleep for like the next 20 minutes. I'm like, oh, it's not happening. One of my other friends had woken up and they were like, oh man, it's 2:45. Like, so we're about to be up anyway. So I'm like, okay. So I roll over, start getting everything ready, and we go and find command. We say, hey, our guys are waking up after our sleep cycle. What do you need? And they told us to go pull security. We're just holding the outside edge of the base right now. So we went, okay. I'm trying to remember the exact timeline of how this happened. I think this happened that night. We were pulling security, and we were hearing stuff in those woods. We were hearing stuff. It was pitch black. We couldn't see anything. There was a very bright moon. It was a full moon night. But there was stuff moving in that woods, and we couldn't see it. All we could do was hear it. It would be silent, and then all of a sudden you'd hear step, 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 stop. And you wouldn't see anything. It was very, very sketchy for the entire morning. It was super sketchy.
And you mentioned you guys weren't nods capable. Do you know if your opponents were nods capable?
I think every single person on the Rebel Militia had nods.
Awesome.
I'm almost convinced that every single one of them did. And if they didn't, goddamn, they were damn good in the dark. But every time I saw them, they had nods on their heads every time I saw them at night. And then that's part of the experience of the event. We are supposed to feel like we are fighting in a place that we shouldn't be. We're supposed to
Gotcha.
feel like we are outnumbered and outgunned, even if we aren't. We're supposed to feel at a disadvantage. And the players on the red team do a great job of making you feel like you are bad at everything you've ever done. Because you'll see two guys and you're just going to start getting wiped out. Your entire squad, there's two gunners that are in the woods somewhere. And before you know it, 4 or 5, 6 of your guys are dead and you still have no idea where these guys are.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was an experience for sure. I wouldn't change it, but next year I definitely want to save up and rent nods specifically for this event, since so much of it is based around nighttime. You are at a huge disadvantage if you don't have them.
Gotcha. So you're outside. It's like 0 dark 100 whatever, like silly o'clock in the morning. You're outside of the base pulling security or whatever. It's dark. You hear footsteps. So like, what's happening next? Like, are you just hanging around? Like, what's going on?
We had split our group into half and half. So half of the group was out on security while the other half was in base. Eating food, getting ready for the morning, making sure all their stuff was ready. And when those footsteps were happening, we did not engage. We couldn't see. We didn't want a white light because we would ruin our natural night vision that was going on. So a lot of it was sitting there and just being like, what the hell was that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was that movement? Was that an animal? Why is an animal breaking all these sticks sounding like a person? Like,
Yeah.
because I feel like most animals are pretty damn good at avoiding that stuff.
Yeah, exactly right.
Whereas people walking through the woods, it's like crunch, 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 snap, like everything's breaking. So it was just paranoia that entire period. I think we did like 30 to 45 minutes on first security schedule while people were getting their stuff ready. And then we swapped down. We had another 30, 45 minutes of a different group while we were eating some food in the morning. And then it started happening. One of our guys spotted somebody close to our base while we had swapped securities again. So this was on the third security schedule. We had swapped out again. And somebody spotted something and we went, man, his name is Edgar. We were like, man, Edgar, he was like jumpy the night before. Like he was thinking he was seeing stuff already, like when we were first out there. So we're like, is he actually seeing something? And he called out contact 12 and it's like 4:30 in the morning and starts shooting into the woods. And we're like, okay, is he actually seeing something? Did he actually see something move? Because it was sketchy the entire time. Like we thought we were hearing stuff for the past hour and a half. There was a guy out in those woods. And he was within 15 feet of our encampment.
Wow.
He had snuck up so close. There was a huge stump just directly outside, like an overturned tree stump. And he was like behind all the dirt behind it. And once Edgar spotted him out, he flashed him and turned and started to retreat. And in that time, we think he had enough time to get up and retreat back into the woods again and hold a completely different position. So we had no idea where he was. We ended up eliminating him after taking a decent amount of casualties. There were 2. We didn't know there was a second one, but now it makes sense in my head. For safety of event, they wouldn't let people just go into the dark woods by themselves. They always have to have a buddy, even on like the staff team. So we saw the engagement happening. Edgar got hit. A couple other guys got hit, and we were like, damn, there's actually somebody out there. We pushed out to the right side, and we started to see the flash of his green from the nods. Occasionally we'd be hearing the shots, and then we'd see like just this little blip of green, and we're like, okay, either that's a tracer like on a gun or that's actually the person. So we started engaging that, and there was immediate heavy fire back from just this guy because he could actually see us. And we couldn't see anything. We got him. He went down, and we pushed to clear that position because there was nothing else we weren't just going to let him sit there. We pushed to clear. It's me, Matt, and one of the guys, Jared, that was running with us for the event. And we were sneaking up there, checking all the corners, no white light, still walking all dark. And we get up to the dead body, and me and Jared pass him, and Matt is behind us. And I talked to Matt after, and he's like, I saw just a glimmer of green, just a slight glow of like green. And he was like low ready, and he raised up his gun, and the guy saw him do that. We think he was waiting for us to pass, but he was like 3 feet behind the dead guy, just laying in the darkness, and we could not see him at all. Matt pulled up his gun after me and Jared had already passed, and we hear this engagement happen right behind us. Lots of shots, definitely some hitting like the flat part of someone's back. It sounded like it hurt, like a lot. And I was just like, oh my god, what happened? I turned around, and Matt had schwacked this guy that was waiting for us to all pass to wipe us all out, and we were passed within 5 or 6 feet of this guy. Just had no idea he was there. And
Matt for MVP, apparently.
Matt saved our ass right there. It was pretty intense. I was not expecting that. And he held it down for us. Me and Jared would have totally been dead if it wasn't for that. So, and man, I think I'm trying to think, was that the morning or before we went to sleep? I'm pretty damn sure that was morning time. Time is so weird in this event. You lay down to go to sleep and it's like nighttime, and then you wake up and it's still nighttime, and you're like, what day is it?
Like, just as a side note, and maybe, just take a brief pause here. You're attending an event like that, as a civilian, right? You're attending this event as someone who, you may have attended, well, in your case, you have attended an event like this in the past, but can you talk a little bit about how you're feeling, like, mentally and physiologically? Because, like, going to sleep and then and having had that experience myself of like, okay, so you're going to sleep and then you're waking up like 2.5 hours later. You haven't gotten a full REM cycle or anything like that. And then you're up and then you're like, I'm doing stuff now. And in addition to that, it's the middle of the night, it's dark, and you have this additional stressor of, oh, there's somebody out there with nods who can see me and I can't see them, and they're waiting for me to go into the woods so they can shoot at me with their airsoft gun, and whether you like it or not, it hurts. So, and then plus you're like, all this anticipation, like, what is going on in your mind? And like, how are you, I guess, internalizing some of that? And does it feel like you're hallucinating, or like, what does that feel like?
That was like a big portion of the event, was wanting to make us feel like we were losing our minds. Like we were just hearing stuff. Like we were just seeing stuff without things actually being there. Midsummer Nightmare 4 did this in a different way. While they had people moving up on us, they actually had this type of speaker that was like, it only projected sound in front of it very, very loudly. And if you were standing behind it, it would be almost like nothing. So they were blaring music and sounds at us like the entire night while we were trying to sleep, to simulate sleep deprivation, not being able to go to sleep, like because things are happening, making you nervous. Did I just hear something in the woods, or was that a sound from down the hill at the damn speaker? A big portion of this event was supposed to be not knowing what is going on, feeling like you're uneasy. You were never safe in those woods. And I'd love to get into a very short story about why you were never safe in the woods, and a very specific event that happened to us this year. So everybody has to go to the bathroom, right? It is the woods, and we are out there for 30 hours. So there's one porta potty on base, and it's at the very beginning of like the walk up to the bottom of the hill. So if you need to go to the bathroom and you want to use the porta potty, you got to walk all the way off base at nighttime. There's probably stuff down there. And you shouldn't be going by yourself. So somebody needs to go use the bathroom. In this case, it was our good old pal, William, who needed to go to the bathroom. He's like, all right, guys, like I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm going to go find somewhere out in the woods over there. So it's been a while, maybe like 5 or 10 minutes, and we haven't heard anything. And then we see like one flash of light, and we were immediately on alert. Everybody in the base was like, we just saw a white light out in the woods. We didn't know that it was Will that was out in the woods. Right? But we start freaking out because we saw a white light. We start posturing for a possible attack, and Will is out there just trying to find somewhere to go to the bathroom. And he's now nervous because we're saying that there's something out there and he doesn't know. So we find out that it was him, and he is like in the darkness, like pure darkness. And he's like, all right, man, look, I don't know if there's someone out here or not, but I'm just trying to go to the bathroom, so if you could wait until after I've gone to the bathroom to shoot me, like, that would be great. Like, I just want to get this done. So he did his stuff, and he came back to base, and afterwards we got into that firefight. We didn't know. This was pre-firefight. After we got into that firefight, we heard the two guys that we killed talking, and one of them said, and this is just a quote, he said, I had to watch a guy take a shit, and then he started talking to the trees, like thinking that, making sure there was nobody around, and he thought he was talking to the trees, but he was really talking to me.
Oh my God.
And he didn't know. And that was one of that. I'm never going to forget that, because that was absolutely hilarious. But you are, especially in events like this, you can get shot when you're sleeping. You can get shot when you're going to the bathroom. You can get shot when you're doing anything that you don't want to be shot doing. And you are never safe. That was the feeling of the event. Can I step outside the wire for 1 second? Am I safe to do this? No, you were never safe to do that. Yeah.
And you would expect that the other players would do you the kindness of not shooting you in the butt while your pants are down and, you know, you're taking a poop or whatever. But there's no guarantee that they're going to do that either.
Absolutely
right?
not. Absolutely not. They could totally do it. Or if they weren't not capable and they saw someone walking through the woods, and then they stop, maybe they think that they're aiming at them. Maybe they think that they're doing something. Like in this case, Will wasn't doing that, but like that could absolutely happen. I talked to the event runner afterwards, and he said, "Yeah, you know, a lot of people think that the red team is just a lot of doing cool guy stuff and ambushing everybody." He's like, "Sometimes you need to watch people go to the bathroom and not do anything about it, because what was happening and what we stopped at the beginning was they were posturing on us to attack without us knowing that they were there. They all got in so close to our base without us knowing, and they were just holding position until everybody could get into a position and then push. And since we got into that engagement, we stopped them from like full on attacking us while we were sleeping. But those guys were there. When we heard them walking around at 3:30 in the morning, those guys were already there. We didn't know because we just thought we were hearing things, but those guys were just sat in a position for like an hour, just waiting for the time to strike. And that
watching people go to the bathroom.
Yeah, you know, apparently that's part of the job. You know, that's something you can expect.
So let's carry on with the event a little. So so eventually dawn will break and then the day will go on and then you go into the second night and stuff. What are some of the things that you and your team are getting up to? And when I say team, I mean like you and your guys, not your entire side, obviously.
Yep. So we talked at the very beginning when we woke up at the day, and they told us that we were going to have a mission at 5 a.m. So that's when the advisors woke up. So we went, okay, 5 a.m. comes, the advisors are still not awake. We're waiting around. They tell us to just pull security. So we're getting a little antsy. We've been up since 3. We were told we were going to be doing stuff. You know, we're hurry up and wait. Very, very standard of things. A lot of time passes. We still don't have any missions. There happened to be like an actual issue with some of the communications between the staff team, which delayed stuff for us. But we got our first mission at about 9:30 in the morning. So we had been up since 3. We had already been up for 6 hours and we were ready to go. And our next sleep cycle was supposed to be at noontime. So we were like, okay, you know, we're running out of time to do what we need to do. What's going to happen? Our first mission, man, I'm trying to even remember what our actual first mission was because we did so much stuff. I'm trying to, man, this whole weekend so much of a blur. I'm having even a hard time to remember exactly what we did. But I'm pretty sure our first mission was we had to go out of the base. We had to locate some treasure. I think there was supposed to be some treasure that was buried somewhere. And we walked down. No, this is wrong. I'm leading you astray. I think I have the missions mixed up. I'm just going to start going. I don't know if these are in the right order or not.
It's all good, man.
Yeah, we had a treasure hunt mission. We were supposed to go to this rock slab. There was a bunch of mined rocks that were all just thrown off to the side of the road. We were told that there was supposed to be some material over there that was buried. That was the intel we got. We went down there. Nothing. We are searching over there for the entire time. There's absolutely nothing there. We're like, did we get bad intel? Was this not what we were supposed to do? Were we in the wrong spot? I'm not sure. Will had postured me. There's a hill that goes all the way down, and he had postured me at the hill above where the rocks were. And I was probably about 100 feet from those rocks. But I had an overview of the entire tree line to the left, behind, and the right. We look up, and there is armed insurgents walking down the road towards us, like 7 or 8 of them. And Will calls it, and we start engaging. We've been told anybody that is carrying a weapon that is wearing civilian clothing, that is their fire. We are able to fight them. It's not a wait, see what they want. It is an engage. They start walking down the road towards us, and Will engages. And I'm up in that overwatch position with my LMG. So I have the entire control of that situation. Will starts engaging. We got people in the woods. They don't have a great angle. And I see Will looking up the road, but then he takes cover along the border. Like there's a cement wall here. And instead of looking back up, he looks here. He looks to the right. So I say to myself, that means they're not further up the road to the left. They must be taking cover on the right side of the road. And what's there is this gigantic pile of gravel. There is this huge pile of gravel on the right side of the road. So I hoofed it up the hill with my LMG and got into a position overlooking that entire spot. And there were just 3 guys just out in the open. So I laid all of them out with like one sustained burst of fire. And then air burst grenades from the top of our base start coming in over because there's more guys behind them. We didn't know. So the air burst grenades make these guys move forward, and I'm still holding that position. And they walk right into my line of fire. And I think it was like 7 guys down in like 30 seconds of an engagement. It was extremely quick. We didn't find anything down there. There was no treasure. There was no buried materials for us. And we found out afterwards that that was a miscommunication of intel. That was actually not a mission. We were not supposed to do that.
Oh my God.
We were given bad intel. We got into that engagement because of it. But that was not something we need to do. And that shows, like, you know, when you're trying to relay information you find within the game into actual missions for the next guys, it's not always so simple. Like it's not direct information that you're being read, like send these guys to this position to find this. It's an interpretation of that. So that was one of the first missions we did. I think the second or third mission, whatever order it was, we were told that there was a market. There was a market that there was supposedly some illicit materials that were being sold, some high-grade weaponry that they should not have. And this market was all the way down past the beginning of the event, past the gates that you walk through, past the parking lot, down the road in the woods. So this was a hike to get away from. And down there was a market set up. But the idea was that we needed people to not go in with weapons. We needed people to go in and negotiate, see what we could get. Can we get this nuclear material? Can we get is there a bomb? Are there any warheads? A flight recorder for a downed plane? Is any of that stuff down there? So what Will did for us, Matt had us navigating. He had a map pulled up on his phone, and Will sent in 3 guys who wanted to be the negotiators. No weapons. They had nothing on them. I think they had maybe a pistol and like a holster or something. And we bushwhacked through all of these thickets up on top of a hill overlooking this marketplace and crawled in underneath this brush to get an overview of the entire market. And this was an overview in the broadest sense of the term. I could see everything, but there was a lot of branches and everything, like a lot of little tiny thin stuff going through. But I had the LMG. If I needed to, I could cut through it and start blasting everybody. But there were all civilians. Everybody there was a civilian. And if we killed one of those guys, it would be super bad news for us. So we crawled in, and it was one of the most tense situations I've been in without shooting at all. We were just prone, overwatching. Like, I felt like I was in an actual situation. Like, our guys are down there. We need to protect them. I don't have good intel. I don't have eyes for this. Like, I can't see anything. But we didn't want the people down there to know that we were even there. We wanted them to think that there was only a group of 3 of us.
Yeah.
And the group of 3 of us didn't even know where we were. We told them we were going to be overwatching, but they couldn't see us. We were just in trees, man. We were just in the trees, and they had no idea. So we're overwatching. They're negotiating. We hear yelling and screaming. We hear stuff happening. Like, what is happening? Are we getting yelled at? Do we have to start unloading? And we're just sitting there, like waiting. Like, somebody shoots. It's all going out the window. Like, we're going to have to do stuff. And a drone comes over top of us and starts lowering right above where we are, right above us. And Will goes, "Oh my God, we've been compromised." And I go, "There's no way that they're drone scouting us right now, right?"
Yeah.
Like that's not happening. We're not actually being drone scouted. But in that moment, man, it's like, are they actually spotting us right now? Do they know exactly where we are? Turns out that drone was just a damn cameraman who was recording pieces of the event. But it was that tense. And we had that much going on that it was like, are we really being spotted out right now? Like, our entire cover is blown. We got out of there. Not a weapon was fired. Nothing. We got out with warhead. We got out with a flight recorder. We got out with more information. We saw that they had high-grade weaponry, that there was a warlord down there. We actually saw it as we were pulling out. Some guy pulled out a side-folding AK, closed it, and threw it on his ATV. And I'm like, did anybody else just see that? Like, did anybody else just watch this guy just load the gun onto the ATV? Like, because that was not supposed to be there. It was not supposed to be down there. So that was intel going back. So we walk back, we get ambushed. No, actually, we didn't get ambushed this time. We got ambushed later, but we walked back up, and there's a local that's leading us up. Apparently, we convinced him to lead us, or he was like, "No, I must show you the downed pilot. I must show you where he is." There's a plane down in the middle of the woods. We knew that we had already gotten the downed pilot. We had already known that this mission was not even a thing. So why is this guy leading us here? Right.
Mhm.
So we're huffing it up. We walked all the way back up. We walked through a side piece into the woods, going back to our base, find the plane. And the civilian's like, "There it is. There's the downed plane. Go get your pilot. Like, what are you waiting for?" And our guys are like, "Okay, we already knew that we had him, but what are we doing?" So they take a couple steps closer, and one of our guys sees the civilian go like this, covering his ears, right as like they're reaching for the door. And our guy's like, "Don't touch the door. Like, don't touch the door." And the civilian just turns and starts walking away down the hill. I'm pretty damn sure those doors were booby traps waiting to explode. Like there was like an Enola Gay like tied to like the door on a string. You pulled it and that thing was going to go, or some sort of claymore. But that shit was just happening. Like there were things like that were actively just trying to kill us like in the event. And
talk about tense.
It was never a safe situation. Like, the civilian's helping us. If we didn't know that we already had the pilot, we probably would have all died. Like, it would have been bad.
So you're getting to all this kind of trouble all day long. Your team's being asked to do all this crazy stuff. And then you lead into the second night, right? Because, like, so you've already have a night where you are getting disrupted sleep. You're tired. You're tense all day. Right? You're tired because, I mean, physically, I mean, you're on the go for an extended period of time. And then you go into the second night where you know you're probably not going to get any more rest than you did the night previous. And in likelihood, probably even less because it's the last night. So they're going to probably try and amp it up.
Oh, yeah.
What's your thought process going into that second night, and how are you feeling?
So our missions before that night were pretty much nonstop. We had maybe like 30 minutes to an hour break in between each, but we didn't have like a dedicated sleep cycle. So I was finding time to sleep. I'd lay down for like 15, 20 minutes and I would just be out. I was fortunate enough that I could do that. Other people aren't as gifted at falling asleep in adverse situations as I am, I guess. But, you know, we had just gone, this was right before nighttime. We had just gone and had a mission where we were detonating firecrackers on top of all of this mining equipment so that no matter what, even if we lost control, they wouldn't be able to mine any more resources. Gotten ambushed. We had completed our mission. We died, but we had blown up everything. Good. We come back up. And there's a built-in stand down into the event where all of the role players and NPCs come together, and they have this called the Yeet Festival, where they cook food for us. We commiserate, we talk, we chat, and a huge portion of it was throwing rocks at other rocks and trying to make them fall off. And I will show you, Phil, the pictures that we have of what we were doing in videos. I'll send you some after this so you can kind of see. But I don't know what it was, but something like came over us, and we needed to just make those rocks fall off the edge of the cliff. It was like a very community-like event where it's like there's this huge slab of rock, we need to do it. And it was
Was this like out of character, like not part of the story, just...
This is built into the story, so It's supposed to be like a celebratory festival when all the civilians, which are everybody, they change clothes and then they come back not to fight. It's a stand down, you know, we eat food, we talk about what's going to happen later, like all of that stuff. You know, it was I don't know, it's a very bringing together experience. People that I don't know, we were all bringing huge boulders to each other, like, try this one, throw this one next, like, is that going to make it fall? You know, we are very simple creatures. We can throw rocks and have the time of our lives, apparently. So after we did that and we ate food, the event runner pulls us aside and said, "Listen, guys, it is, 7 o'clock now. We had started at 5. There's like a 2-hour break. The rest of the night for the next 4 to 6 hours, if not even more than that, are going to be much worse than everything else that you've just experienced. It's not going to be easy. You're going to be tested. It's going to be more difficult than you probably are expecting, but you need to try to see it through as best you can because we think it's worth it." And they told us that you are going to be tired. You are going to be hungry. You are going to not know what's coming next. You're going to not know if you can even get to your supplies. And to preface that, we stepped off at 8 o'clock at night, if that, maybe a little bit earlier, when we didn't come back until the end of the event. Our squad was out the rest of the event until we came back. And we were tired, man. I made sure that I had enough water, I had snacks on me, I had ammo and everything, but I didn't know that we were going to be gone for the next 6 hours. I had no idea. Um, we thought we were going to be coming back to base, and that just didn't happen. At like 8 o'clock, we started hearing these fireworks go off, and we're already tired. We're like, all right, maybe it's time to sit down and get some rest. And we hear that the militia is massacring a local city. So we're sent to go stop this, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And we get down there, and it is by a creek. It is foggy. It is dark. We can't see anything. And we are just getting schwacked by guys that have guns up on a hill. We had to pull out of there, but it was starting to test our mental. It really was, because we were walking into a situation. We were walking through water. We were getting wet. We had not bad intel, but we didn't have intel that was helping us with this situation. And we pulled out. We said, we can't do this. We got to pull back up. We had actually switched. Matt wanted to lead some stuff because he was doing medic stuff. He wanted to do some leading and not have to sit back as a medic. So we pulled out of there, and we found out we took the rest of the city. Now, we're already exhausted. We are black on medic bans. We got nothing.
Mm-hmm.
We hear over the comms, everybody except for Squad 4 return to the FOB and prepare. Suit up and get ready for one of our final missions. And we're black, man. We got nothing. We got no ammo. We have ammo, but we have no medic bans. People are tired. One of our guys had started cramping up because he hadn't eaten enough food. He didn't drink enough water, which was a huge thing. It was hey man, we're about to go on this like long walk. Like, are you going to be good? And he walked it off, and he was fine after he chugged some water and ate some food. But that was like an actual concern. Like, we were out there. We were not getting a rest period. So the last 6 hours of the event, it was mission.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy. I mean, like, we can talk about that in the AAR portion, but I mean, there's such a huge portion of that when you're doing something like that is reliant on people being like trained, right, for that kind of environment. I don't mean like you have to train physically, but it certainly doesn't hurt. But like, you have to know what it feels like when your body is cramping because you haven't had enough food or water, and be able to take countermeasures, right? So it's like, okay, I know that we're going out for this mission. I've got a snack on me that has salt in it, so I'll be fine, or whatever. Like, and we talk about that after. But I mean, it's really, when I hear that, I'm like, geez, like, that's very fortunate that guy was able to just walk it off. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No, and that was an actual worry for me, because I knew our next mission after, when the cadre came down, they briefed us. They said, all right, this is our temporary FOB for now, so refresh your bandages. So we didn't have to go back up to base. We were like, thank God, because we had nothing. we were all black on bandages. And I turned around, and he said, man, I'm getting this real bad leg cramp right now. And he had actually just fallen asleep like against the gravel. We were that tired. If you stop moving, it's like your body stops. It's ready to go to sleep. He woke up, and he's like, man, my leg is just not doing good. Like, I need some water. I need something. And luckily enough, he ate a bunch of trail mix and chugged water and started walking, and then he was fine. But when you're in the middle of everything, you're not thinking about drinking your water. You're not thinking about eating your food. And when you start feeling thirsty, it's already probably too late, man. You should have been drinking that water before that. And that's an endurance part of the game. You're not expecting to do this in a regular airsoft game. In a lot of milsims, you are never pushed to that limit of needing to be able to police yourself for 6 hours of gameplay. Make sure that you have everything ready that entire time. We started stepping off. We started walking down. One of our final missions, which happened to be our second to final mission. One of the local guys, his name was Pascal, had been an informant for us, and the Harm rebels had found out and killed his daughter. And he showed us his daughter. It was like half of a body, essentially. Like, the upper half of her body was there, and then everything else was gone. And we were like, oh my God. Like, it was just pitch black, and he lifted up the shirt. I thought it was a toddler. It was a full person, but it was just missing half of it. I was like, oh my God, what happened? So the idea was that we needed to go to Pascal's house where they were, and we needed to exact revenge on these rebels that were down there and that murdered his daughter. Cue the part of the night where it started getting absolutely crazy. Second night, there is no real moon. Or if there is a moon, it's very overcast, so we can't see anything. There's no like natural light up from above us at all. And we actually had to go back down to the marketplace where we where we schwacked through and we were overwatching. That was now where the house was. And it is pitch black in the woods. We cannot see anything. And we had to essentially grab onto the guy in front of us. Matt told us, like, hey, well, at the very beginning of the event, Will was very huge on you need to have a battle buddy and you need to stay with him the entire time. You are accountable for that person. If you lose him and he loses you, it can be very easy to get lost in the woods in the dark. So from the very beginning of the event, it was established we need battle buddies all the time. We were walking through the woods, holding on to each other because it was so dark. Just walking through the dark, hoping that the first person in front of us took a good step. And that will keep following the next good step that he took. And we get down there and everybody is getting destroyed. It's all pitch black. These guys are dug into the woods. We can't see anything. And where the engagement is happening is all those thickets that we had to walk through at the very beginning. And it's, you turn on a light and there's so much in front of you that the light only lights up the trees. You can't see past it at all. So half of our squad went down to the left and they got engaged and they got taken out. A medic got them back up and Matt pulled us back and he said, we need to go. It was an L formation essentially. So we had half the squad down here that got revived and we pulled back up and around and came from the top. And Matt had us do something that I find out is very basic in the military, but very useful for us. He just had us do bounding movement through the pitch black trees while firing. He had me assigned as front left and he was front right. And I had a guy behind me and he had a guy behind him. And he said, when I yell left, you walk forward and you shoot and you flash and you don't stop until we call right. And then we hold. So we're yelling, we're screaming, we're flashing our lights. Matt's yelling out to our guys on the left side to start flashing across the woods because they can't see anything either. They flash the lights and all they see is trees, but they're providing the cross light to us. I can actually see further than I need to because it's lighting up the trees in the distance for me. So I can actually walk through the woods. And we are getting, there are people in those woods, man, and I had no idea where they were. But I still have a sore throat now from the yelling I was doing while I was pushing through those trees. I was hearing shots. I was putting down fire. We were spraying through the woods, and I definitely lit some people up to the point where I felt bad about it because it was pitch black and I couldn't see a thing. But we got through those thickets. We pushed through those thickets. We went down. We got revived. But that was one of the coolest things that I had ever done, ever.
Yeah, it
the event.
Sounds like it.
I put my total trust in what I was being told to push through this brush. I hate walking into things that I don't know what's going on. And it was literally like, put your gun up in front of your face, walk through. All the branches are pulling everything off of you, but you just got to keep going forward. And we made it through. We got through the darkness. We made it through into the other side, into the break. And we had everybody, even though we were black on bandages again, everybody was alive. And we got through it. And then our next mission was going back to our fire base where they had taken over our sleeping quarters.
Nice.
Yep. So that was how the night ends. It goes, all right, you saved, you've avenged Pascal for the people that killed his daughter. Now you need to go fight for your right to sleep tonight. And they were dug into our base. They were completely dug into our base. So at this point, we've been out of our base for probably 3 hours. We were still on the supplies that we had when we left, and now we have to fight to get back to our own supplies. Pitch black through the woods. They tell 4, we're following one nods capable group up through this path that had the plane with the down pilot on it originally. And we get up there and people are tripping over themselves. They're tripping over the ground. It is so dark, you can't see anything. And there was a little bit of complaining. It was dangerous walking through the woods in the dark like that, not knowing what you're stepping on. And Matt heard that and he turned around and he pretty much dad talked us for a second and said, listen, I know this fucking sucks. I know this is bad. I know that this is not ideal, but this is what we have to do right now. Everybody needs to grab on. And actually, I think Will was the guy that said we all need to grab onto each other and just step and just start walking. We must have looked like a gigantic tactical caterpillar walking through those woods just by the sheer amount of people we had strapped onto us. But we made it through. There was morale was at an all-time low at that point. We were upset. It was pitch black. Why are the guys without nods getting sent on this part of the mission? Why are we going through these woods where we can't see anything? But Matt and Will talked about it and said, listen, this is what we have to do. We're going to push through. It's going to suck. It's going to really be bad. I know you don't want to do this, but this is what we have to do. So we got up to the bunker where we were being held back from. Our base was on the other side of this bunker, and we couldn't respawn at our base because they had taken down our flag and they had control of it. So if we died, we had to go all the way back down to the beginning of the event if we had to redcon and walk all the way back up. And that is a mental thing that's pressing on you the entire time.
Yeah,
It
really.
says, if we have to redcon, man, we're gonna have to go all the way back down, like at least 3/4 of a mile, and then come back up, like walk like a mile and a half just to get back to this fight. Like that's not what you want to do, right?
Yeah.
So they have spotlights, they have nods, they have everything sitting in that bunker, and we can't see anything. So we have nods capable guys on the road, and we're told to hit the deck. We crawled 150 feet in the darkness through those woods, and our event runner was behind us with a night vision camera, and he was watching us. And we found out afterwards, he's like, I think I just saw some of the most dedicated shit I've seen ever. I've never seen a group of nods incapable guys low crawl 150 feet through the woods in the pitch black to get up to the bunker. And what we were doing was we would see the lights would go off, and we'd start crawling. We would just start moving, and we didn't know where we were going next. I was just low crawling and medium crawling. I definitely wasn't dragging my face across the ground, but I was as low as I could, inching closer to that base under heavy fire, suppressive LMG fire, and a lot of this was tracerless, so we could not see where it was actually coming from.
Right.
We just knew we were getting lit up. And I went down. We were probably about 75 feet from the bunker, and I got destroyed. Somebody stood up. I had no idea where they were, and they just lit me up. And I was upset. Not at that person, but I was like, I just crawled all this way to get killed right here. I knew we had no medic bandages. I knew we had nothing. And I was a ghost, man. I ghosted for about 45 minutes. I bled out in 10, and I was just there watching everybody else be awesome around me. Long story short, we kept crawling. We were suppressing that base. We had 2 guys jump through the windows of the bunker after we cleared out the bunker. They one of them took off his plate carrier and went in feet first into the bunker, and then had his gear handed back to him. Another one head first right through. And we were on our final defense, or our final assault to get into our base. And they were everywhere. They were on top of our talk, where the command center is. They were in our sleeping quarters where we had put up our tents, and it was pitch black and we couldn't see anything. When the event runner comes over to me, his name is Gordon, and he goes, "Hey, are you dead?" And I went, "Yeah, I'm dead." And he went, "Okay, are you an LMG?" And I went, "Yeah, I am." And he said, "Okay, you're alive again." And I went, "What?" And he went, "It's me. It's Cobalt. I can do this a couple times a weekend. So you're up." And I went, "Oh my God." And I told my friends, "Guys, I'm alive again." They went, "What?" And I was just resurrected. It was the mission at hand was not to make us go back. It was allow this charge to keep happening. And it's not like he has unlimited. Throughout the entire weekend, he had 5. 5 of his God revives to use whenever he needed to. And it was just a life. I still had no other lives. If I got shot again, there were no bandages. So we had one more chance by getting me back in. And essentially what happened is there was about another hour period once we got up to that ridge where we were just watching. I got into this ridiculous overwatch position through some bushes where I had view on the top of the command center and down into the lower area where there were tents. And I learned something from that position. You don't always need nods if you have somebody that's confident with a flashlight. And I'm not talking about me, but I learned that an adjacent flashlight to you that's flashing a position allowed me to see everything about where my shots were going, as long as I was shooting into the light. I had a guy set up a spotlight directly next to me, I'm going to flash this, start shooting it. He flashed it, and I was shooting at an angle into it, and I was watching every single shot everywhere it was going. And it was great. It was fantastic. Nods guys came up behind us. We were like, "Where are our reinforcements?" Half of the team had gone to sleep. So it was our squad and one other squad that were actually doing this fight, and another 10 or 15 people had given up. It was just us on the final push to this base. And we were like, "Where's our reinforcements, man? Why is it just us up here? Where is everybody else?" And we finally snuffed out where everybody was. Will had snuck through the woods, and he was actually giving some instructions to the guys that had nods that were just trudging through the woods because they could see in the dark, but they were super noisy. Will had Metal Gear Solid snaked his way into a cover where he actually had angles on people. But if you start shooting, you're immediately giving up your position. So it was very stressful for everybody. So very long period of holding positions where it was actually very tedious. Where are we dying from? Nods guys would run in, super cool, running right through, and then all of a sudden they get schwacked. And we'd be like, we have no idea where he died from. And we finally figured out that there was a guy behind the barrels at the top of our talk, literally directly in front of us that we couldn't see. One of our guys flash lighted the barrels, and I lit it up, started suppressing it, and I heard him nervous laugh. I heard him go, oh, yeah, like when I started suppressing it. And then I moved my fire slightly to the left, to the flagpole, and then he called his hit. And we had eliminated what we thought was the final guy on top of the base. One of our guys, Edgar, said, screw this, I'm getting up there. He ran up to the flag, secured the flag for us, and we moved in, and the game was called, man. It was like 12:30 at night. We had stepped off at like 7:30, something like that, and the game was over. We finally made it back to the base, and it was one of the most invigorating feelings ever. I've never felt more proud of everybody I was with than at that time.
So let's talk AAR. Like, from your perspective, like what worked well, like in terms of both like what your team was doing, and obviously, you know, just as a side note, if your team is capable of doing that without nods, imagine what they will do next year with nods, right?
We were saying that,
yeah. Like, I digress.
Yeah.
What worked well with your team that you would want to do again in terms of the event? And I guess if you were talking to Gordon, the event runner Cobalt, what would you tell them was what worked really well that weekend?
I think the entire feeling of paranoia and not knowing what was next was like the highlight of the event. We were doing cool guy stuff. We were going on cool guy missions and everything like that. But the feeling of not being where you're supposed to be, the feeling of not belonging here was very apparent. The entire time, it just felt like there was absolute hatred to the fact there was an outside force, which is how it should be, right? That people are in your land, you know, this is your home, and now an outside group is taking it. Like, I'd be upset about that too. So the feeling of the red team, the role players and the opposing players, of making us feel like we had no idea what we were doing. Sometimes we had no idea the terrain. We were not prepared, was absolutely perfect. Did we lose fights? Did we win fights? Absolutely, we did. But it was never without it. It was never easy. It was always like an entire squad having to work to take out like 3 guys. It was never a simple fight.
Yeah, and you mentioned, and I want to come back to that in a second. You mentioned like half of your team sort of was gone to sleep and gave up or whatever. So we'll talk about that in a second. But aside from that, like, what do you think could have been done better that weekend? So both in terms of like, what do you think your team could have done better? By the sounds of it, probably like your teammates. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of room for improvement. I think you did the best that you could given the circumstance. But if there's anything that stands out to you on that front, sure. But like in terms of the event, like what were the even betters for you?
Yeah. So Gordon was put into a position where there were a lot of people that signed up for volunteering for the event, and then at the very end they had to drop out. So they were a little bit lower on actual role player numbers. I think they wanted 30 and they ended up being at like 24 for the event. So it was an uphill battle for them too. What I would say personally, and this, I don't even know if this is really in their control because, you know, unfortunate circumstances, communication between our cadre and like the event runners, because our cadre, I think, end up knowing a little bit more than we get because they're pushing the story of the event, you know, right. Stuff like that. Sometimes we were sent on stuff with bad intel, and I think it's because, and I'm not saying this is the event runner's fault at all. This is a criticism for the event as a whole. I'm not saying our cadre did a bad job, but I wish that we would have had more information going into missions. And we actually talked about this at lunch yesterday. We said it would be great if before we got sent on a mission, we had a brief overview of this is everything that's happened up until this point right now. And now this is what you're doing as a result of that. And what you find out from this will lead into what we're doing next. We weren't given that. When we were up there, it was, hey, this is your mission. Your mission is to go detonate all these charges so that they can't mine anymore, even if we lose. Like, even if we lose control up here. We weren't given the context behind what's happening. When we were going to look for sand, looking for that material, that we found out was bad intel. That was because it wasn't an actual mission. The whole thing was showing that this guy that was our informant had been compromised. He had actually dug up the sand, the materials for the rebels. He had done that. And if we had read the mission a bit more, if we had looked at the intel a bit more, Gordon told us, like, it literally said, give harm sand on it. Like, it said that. Not like we were supposed to do that, but that guy, Pascal, was already, getting threatened by these people. That he was no longer, what's the word? He was no longer reliable. He could not be somebody that we could trust anymore. So that was bad intel. And that wasn't something that Cadre did poorly. But knowing what we should have known leading up to that, like, hey, this is why we're looking for these materials. We had no idea why those materials would be there. If we kind of knew why, what we were looking for, like, oh, we've been told that our informant has buried those materials out there, then it would give us more context. But we didn't get that. We were just told, go find materials. And that's it. So from an event runner standpoint, I think Gordon did a really good job. I think there were some communication errors at the beginning, which delayed our first missions, which is, I'm not going to knock on that. It's everybody's human and mistakes happen and stuff like that. It took a little bit longer to get our missions, but my only real criticism was it would have been nice to have more information before stepping off into these unknowns, because while variables are a huge thing, like if I was in the real world, man, I wouldn't be going in there without knowing what I feel like I need to know. Like I'd want the context, and I feel like that would add to the event as well if we were given the full, like, hey, this is why we're doing this right now type of story.
Yeah, and it certainly sounds like having that extra information wouldn't have harmed the other thing that they're trying to set up, which is that sense of, like, not belonging and all this kind of stuff. You can still provide that information and not break that sort of other illusion or sense of immersion, I guess. So I totally hear what you're saying. And I think just from a gameplay standpoint, sometimes you want to keep your players in the dark, which I think is good, but knowing what information is important to the player as, for lack of a better term, a customer versus the player as like the person in the game. Like, I think is it's probably an art more than it is a science, but it's important, I think, for a game runner to get that in sort of information from the player, being like, hey, next time this is the kind of information that I as a player would have appreciated to have a little bit more of. So yeah.
And I'd like to say, just like with that being said, this was my favorite event that I've ever done. This was
it certainly sounds like it.
This was my favorite event that I've ever done. It sucked. It was bad. It hurt. I came home. I had since we were crawling through the dirt, all my stuff is covered in sand. I'm gonna have to clean out my guns. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that Chaz talks about, the moon dust that he plays in that gets in all of his guns. Like, this just quarry sand that is in everything. Like, in all my guns, I had it on my neck. It was on underneath my mask. Like, I got like rashes and stuff, like, from having the mask on the whole weekend, like on the sides of my neck. Like, all of it sucked. It really did. But it sucked so badly that it was great.
It's the old it's type 2 fun, right?
Seriously. And knowing that everybody else was out there also, getting destroyed the way that we were, having the same types of feelings, getting tired, being sleep deprived, not being sure, having to do crappy things. It was all of a we're all in this together type of thing. And
so, yeah,
I was just gonna say, like, there were a lot of people that I didn't know going into it. We ran with a new guy named Jared, who we were able to get out to the event at like the last second. And I told them, and we said at the very beginning, Will actually said this, like, you're going to start this weekend as friends, and you guys are going to come out of this as brothers. Like, there's going to be a lot of bonding that happened, and I feel closer to every single person that was in our group after that event. There was a lot of trust that was put into each other. There was a lot of dependability. There was a lot of accountability that everybody was being held to. And I wouldn't change anything about that for the event.
Yeah.
I think that it really makes you come together and work as one.
I think they call that trauma bonding. I guess my last question for you about all of this, and I think it's an important one. What do you think the organizers could do differently to help or prevent people from hitting that wall and then just giving up part of the way through the game. Because obviously, if you start with 45 people on your team, and at the end of the day, there's 20 left, I think it's a different vibe if you're just talking about like a scenario game or a big event or something like that. But something like this, which is such an experience that players ought to know what they're getting into, and like, you know, especially when the organizer's capable of saying, it's like, guys, we're going out, it's going to be tough, it's going to be hard, but definitely stick it out because we think it's going to be worth it. What else can they do to get players ready to actually, you know, grin and bear it and see it through, rather than sort of, I guess, DNF, you know, did not finish partway through?
It's tough because I think a lot of it goes into the individual player's willingness to want to do it. The guys that I had with me, I knew every single one of them. Even if we moaned and complained, I knew that we would be able to keep pushing through it. Like, it's going to suck, but we're going to do it. Not everybody has that when it comes to airsoft, and I've said this before. And you know, airsofters take the path of least resistance the great majority of time. And we've talked about that. Like, why are so many airsofters not flanking up the hill? Instead, they're walking straight down the road towards you. It's because the extra effort in airsoft is not easy. A lot of times that extra effort that you put in to make something worthwhile it's not fun. Nobody likes doing that. You know, it makes you tired, it makes you hungry, it makes you sore, all that stuff. But this event specifically, I feel like they've done a good job explaining it. I don't know if there's really anything Gordon could say to make it like, hey, you guys are going to have to tough this out, because at the end of the day, there's still going to be some people that are not going to do that. They're not going to be willing to do it through their own volition or thinking they can't. But I think stories like this, hearing the experience that we had from being in an adverse situation where we had no business being so far up. We turned from the support into the attack. We were the assault team without night vision capabilities on our own base, because we were able to do that. And I think that story right there is just a showing of your body hurts, your head hurts, you're tired, everything. Unless you are actually physically harming yourself by doing something, you can probably keep pushing through that. And if you make it through the other side, it's going to be more worth it than you can ever describe. The feeling of absolute satisfaction when we heard game get called, and we knew that we were, and Gordon recognized us at the end. He said, I saw a full squad of nods incapable guys low crawl through the dark up to the bunker. And he said, you guys need to give squad 4 a round of applause for what they just did. Because, you know, like you said, there were people sleeping. There were people that had already given up that said, you know what, man, I'm just going to go to bed. I'm just going to turn on my dead light and walk into these tents that are not supposed to be shot out of. And then they just gave up. We pushed that story. We had groups of people that were there with us that wanted that story to end in the way we needed it to. And without the collective teamwork of everybody that was willing to stick it out, that ending might not have happened, man. Maybe our next game that year or next year would be we don't have control of that base. Maybe it's something not safe. Maybe we have to freaking rough it out in the wood line. Maybe that becomes like their new story. But our group, the groups around us, we were able to create that story for the future. And I don't even know if there's ways to describe how amazing that feeling is. Was it a win or lose situation? I mean, at the moment, it felt like we goddamn won. But did we really? No, we created our own experience, and we were able to see it through. So it was amazing.
You know, like it's so funny because like there's so much, especially if you watch any like military documentaries about like military training and stuff, like Bud's Class 230, 234 or whatever. You hear guys have all these mantras around like, you know, pays to be a winner, second place is first losers, right? Or don't quit when you're tired, quit when you're done, like all this kind of stuff. And it's easy to dismiss that as just like tough guy posturing, but the reality is, and you're hearing it firsthand from Jordan here today, is that in a lot of these cases, when you have a situation like that, it does pay to tough it out. It does pay to see it through to its logical conclusion. And I mean, you know, nothing, I use the saying, you know, nothing worth doing is ever easy, right? And so if you're in a situation where it's like, man, this sucks and I don't like the way it sucks and everything hurts, like obviously you're not going to put yourself through physical injury to get through something like that. But in a controlled circumstance like that, it's often going to be worth the payoff to just slug it out, 1 more mile, 1 more hour, 10 more minutes, whatever it is. And the reality is that the temptation to quit is closest as you near the finish line, right? And so those people who are like, I'm going to go sleep or whatever, like, that's because they're right at the end. Like, if you can just sort of slug it out a little bit longer, you'll probably get that payoff. And in your case, I mean, your squad did the work, right? And you reap the rewards of that, both in terms of, your hoarse voice and your sore body you're paying for it today.
Oh yeah.
But like, you're in terms of pride and accomplishment, right? Like, that's something you're going to carry now forever, right? Like, this is an accomplishment that you and your guys have. That's another feather in your cap, and that's super cool. Nobody can take that away from you, right?
Yeah.
Not least of which the 20 or so people who decided to go pack it in for the night. You know what I mean?
No, and that's what it's all about, man. We talk about airsoft being about going out and dressing up and playing long range tag, as adults. That's a lot about what it was. But this was not about that. This is about trusting and working together with the guys that you need to, the guys that are right next to you. And I think everybody, even the guys that, at the very end, they ended up going to sleep. They helped us that event to get to where we needed to be. And at the end of the day, we were all better for it at the end. I was saying hi, I was giving hugs, I was giving high fives. There was a huge amount of just physical and mental camaraderie that was formed just by surviving this. I looked at the guys and I said, guys, we made it through this. We didn't have any casualties, we didn't have any actual injuries. We were sore, we were tired, we were dirty, and we oh my god, we smelled awful. But all of that together, I wouldn't have wanted to do it with anybody else. All of those guys, like, I know I can look at them now and be like, we did it. I know I can trust you guys. That was one of the best times of airsoft and of one of the most enjoyable times of my life. It was absolutely amazing.
Trauma bonded for life. Well, Jordan, thanks so much for joining us and sharing your story from Midsummer Nightmare 6. Hopefully Gordon gets a chance to hear your story and hear it sort of firsthand from you, what kind of experience he created, because as a game organizer, if I had one of my players share a story like that about one of my games, like, that would be very meaningful. So hopefully he gets a chance to listen to it. Someone who knows him might want to send him this episode. I don't know, just shameless plug. But thank you so much for sharing that with us, Jordan. It was awesome. I know we ran a little long, but it was totally worth it. So thanks for being here. Thank you guys for listening. As always, if you want to keep the conversation going, if you want to see some of Jordan's pictures, join the Discord. They're going to be in the picture palettes on the Discord. The link is in the description. But until then, that's all we got for you. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.